I was watching my daughter's kids while she and her husband go out of town. They have a teenage daughter. Let's just say her name is Alyssa. At 3 a.m., I'm woken up by a weird rustling sound and look out the window and see movement. I saw a boy emerge from the bushes on the side of the house. I saw a bike tossed on the lawn that definitely wasn't ours. My first thought was it was a burglar casing houses, but since he looked young and came through on a bike, I figured scaring him straight would be enough for him to decide to head home. Didn't want to ruin a teenager's life by calling the cops straight away. So I went on the porch, flipped the lights on, and said, "Can I help you?" in my classroom voice. The guy looked surprised but not nervous. He was wearing a Letterman-style jacket, but once I got a clear view of him in the street lights, he seemed much older than my granddaughter, gruff and way more wiry than athletic. He walked up closer to the house and said, "Yeah, I'm looking for Alyssa." I gave him a disapproving glare, hoping he'd realize he came looking for a girl late at night, and a grumpy old person answered. I'm thinking what must have happened is Alyssa knew her parents were going out of town, and maybe before she knew I'd be staying over, told a secret older boyfriend to come over. It was late and I was alone with several kids, so I didn't want him coming any closer to the house. I also thought it was weird he came so late, and wanted to be sure Alyssa actually wanted to talk to him. So I said, "I'm sorry, who?" And he said Alyssa. You know, Alyssa, last name. This is her house. I thought he knew her full name, so they must be at least friends. I said, "You wait there," and started to walk up, and I felt a sick burning in my gut. Instinct kicked in. I yelled, "No, stop, freeze." Then readjusted and said, "You stay right there. This is private property. Don't take a step closer. Wait there." So I go in, and Alyssa is asleep just one room over from where the rustling first occurred, and I wake her up and say something to the effect of, "I don't know what the big idea was to have friends over this time of night, but you tell them to go home." She has no clue what I'm talking about. I say, "There's a guy outside asking for you." Confused, she gets up and goes to the window. She sees him and goes white as a sheet. "He asked for me?" "Yeah." "By name?" "Yes." "Call the police. I've never seen him in my life." I called 911 immediately, but as I was on the phone with them, Alyssa started tugging at my arm. "He's coming up." I had younger kids in the house to think about, so I kept the door latched and pulled it just open enough for the latch and yelled, "I asked my husband, and none of us know an Alyssa last name. Leave my property, or I'm calling 911. He got angry and started yelling for her to come out. Thankfully, the police came pretty quickly, and when he heard the sirens, he grabbed his bike and ran off. I watched where he was running, and he jumped into the passenger side of a car without headlights or front plates and sped off. The police followed in the same direction once I pointed them, but they didn't get him. They advised us to take all her social media details offline if she was sure she didn't know this person, and said they'd had a couple similar reports recently and were looking into it. I got a heavy-duty lock, and she slept in my room for the remainder of my visit. A few years ago, I was renting a house in Northern California. The neighborhood was just outside of the suburbs. It seemed like the perfect balance of having space and having nice neighbors close enough not to feel isolated. The area had no streetlights, so it was very dark at night, especially if there were clouds blocking the moonlight. It didn't bother me though. It made my little house feel even more quaint on dark nights. I got home from work one day in midwinter. It was a cloudy night, so pulling up to my house, I saw only what my headlights and front porch light illuminated. When I got out of my car, I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke. That was odd, as I'd never smelled that before around the house. I didn't see anyone nearby, so I ignored it and went inside. I had just got off a shift with a few hours of overtime, so I felt pretty tired. Even though it wasn't even 7 yet, I decided to take a shower and call it a night. I woke up sometime later, sure that I had heard a noise inside my house. I wasn't worried right away because my friend would sometimes stop by to use my shower after work on his way to his night classes. I even gave him a spare key so he could stop by even if I wasn't home. He would always text me to let me know beforehand though, and I hadn't heard my phone go off. I reached over to my bedside table and picked up my cell phone to see if my friend had sent me a text. The bright light from my phone's screen and number pad blinded me. These were the days before phones had a light sensor that would dim the screen in the dark, and this particular phone was so bright I could use it as a flashlight. Through squinted eyes, I could make out that it was 9-something, but I couldn't tell if I had an unread text or not. I set my phone aside and called out my friend's name. There were a couple of seconds of silence before I heard loud footfalls as someone started running through the bottom floor of the house. I leapt out of bed and ran to the closet. They were already up the stairs by the time I had opened the door and stepped inside. The house had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms on either side of the hallway, the one I was in, and a spare, and a bathroom at the end. The bedroom doors were both closed, but the bathroom door was cracked open. I heard whoever was in my house thunder down the hallway, past my door, and into the bathroom. Thank God he did. That gave me enough time to open the attic access in the ceiling of my closet and hoist myself up. I just started to lift myself when the person ran back out of the bathroom. My feet were barely inside of the attic when my bedroom door burst open. I heard footsteps run into my room and stop. When they didn't see me in that room, they ran back to the hallway and into the other room, which just had boxes stacked in a corner, some weights, and a table where I painted my miniature models. I guess they decided that if someone were hiding, it would be in the bedroom because they charged back into my room and turned on the light. A moment later, the closet door was ripped open. I was crouched in my attic just a foot or so away from the access, so I could try to stop them if they started to climb up. From my vantage point, all I could see was from about their knee down. They were wearing dirty blue jeans with frayed cuffs and worn work boots. After a few seconds of looking in the closet, they stepped away and I heard a loud crash come from my room, followed by a scream of frustration and anger. That scream was the most unnerving part of the incident for me. It reminded me far too much of my stepfather, who would scream in a similar way when he lost his temper. He would eventually be put in mental hospital for several mental disorders that resulted in erratic and violent tendencies. The man in my house ran back down the stairs. I heard crashes and clatters as things were thrown around and furniture was knocked over. I stayed crouched in the attic. I'd left my cell phone when I ran for the closet, and I wasn't certain I could climb down without him hearing. After some time, the noises stopped. I started counting slowly. When I reached 1,000, I decided it was safe enough to climb down and call the police. The first thing I noticed when I exited the closet was the intruder had flipped my bed over, I assume in an attempt to find me. That was the loud noise I had heard after he stepped away from the closet. I couldn't find my cell phone, so I went to the landline by my bed and called the police. I waited in my room until I heard them call out from downstairs. The first floor was a mess, but I had expected that. Chairs had been knocked over, the sofa had been flipped, all the books, pictures, and knickknacks I had on my shelves were strewn across the floor. The cupboards in the kitchen had been opened, and all the boxed and canned food had been thrown to the ground. As far as I could tell though, the only thing missing was a single knife out of the wooden block in my kitchen. The police checked the house from top to bottom. They found that the side door had been forced open by something like a crowbar. They also found a few cigarette butts along my fence line, along with some foil and an empty pen tube, which the police said people often use to smoke meth. So they think he had been watching my house for a while. I realized that he must have been out there smoking a cigarette when I got home. They collected up the evidence and told me I should stay with family or friends that night and get the door fixed as soon as possible. I opted to just not sleep. I moved a shelf over to block the broken door and spent the next couple hours cleaning things up. I would often go to the window with a flashlight and shine it along the fence line where the police found the cigarette butts and foil, but I didn't see anything. The next day, I called to have the door fixed and motion lights installed at the back and sides of my house. I ran a phone cable up into the attic and added a landline. I never wanted to be stuck up there without a phone again. Nothing else happened at the house though. I lived there another 3 years without incident. One more precaution I took was practicing getting out of my bed. going to my closet and climbing into the attic as quickly and quietly as possible. I even kept at it when I moved, except now I go to a crawl space at the back of the closet instead of the attic. I try not to think about what would have happened if I had been a bit slower getting to the attic, or if he hadn't gone into the bathroom at the end of the hall first. So this happened in 2013, and I was 17. My family was looking at this house, and the owner showed up and talked with my parents. Seemed like a nice older man, built the house himself. It's a pretty nice 2-story house overlooking a river. Anyway, I was standing back watching everyone talk, and as the owner is talking and laughing, there's a break in the conversation where he turns away from my parents and his expression completely and instantly changes from happy to the most sinister and hateful scowl I've ever seen. I don't think he noticed me watching. I probably appeared to be on my phone as my head was down. As soon as he turned back, he instantly went back to smiling. It was so creepy and honestly made me feel sick. I told my mom, who said it was weird, but maybe he's just awkward. So we got the house. We moved in, and the next weekend, my family's going to church, but I don't feel like going. So they all leave me at home. So it's Sunday morning, about 11 a.m., when I hear really loud banging outside. It's rhythmic and coming from the side of the house. I was on the other side of the house on the second floor. Honestly, my dumb ass thought it was maybe the wind, and I didn't think much of it. It stopped after about 5 minutes. 10 minutes later, I hear walking around downstairs, chairs moving, kitchen cabinets opening, and the fridge opening. I immediately quietly go lock my door, grab my baseball bat, and call 911. While I tell them my address, I text my mom and tell her that someone is in the house and that I've called 911. At that point, the 911 operator said that someone was 10 minutes out. I tell her to be quiet because I heard steps coming towards the stairs. Basically, the house is so thin I could track where he was in the house. At this time, my mom responded that she's on her way. She's 30 minutes away. So here is a 17-year-old, 5'2", 100-pound girl hunkered in her room, full well knowing that if he came in, he'd overpower me and take the bat. I was fucking terrified. I heard him walk down the hallway towards my door. I saw the handle turn and stop. It was locked, and I heard him stand there. He didn't move. I could hear his breathing. It felt like forever, but really, I think it was about 10 seconds. I heard him turn and go back down. I heard the back door open and shut. About 3 minutes later, the police pulled up. The 911 operator asked me if I could let them in or if they needed to force it. I knew he had left, so I let them in. No one was there. No sign of forced entry, nothing. When my mom got there, she looked at my stepdad and asked if he had changed the locks. He hadn't. I think the creepiest part, and what really validated my story, was that my mom had just vacuumed the hallway, and there were shoe prints that were larger than anyone in our house, and the police hadn't been up there, and they stopped just outside my room. He died about a year after that.